Good morning, everybody. We're on the North Shore of Maui, and we decided we wanted to share with you a little bit of the workings of our farm and what's going on. Earlier, we posted a plant on there, and we asked people what it was to see if people would recognize it or not, and that is this plant in front of me right here. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but what I'm going to basically do this morning is I'm going to walk you around and just show you some of the things where I can up close next to our Wi-Fi signal. There's a whole farm here, which I really can't show you the whole thing until we remedy that. But at the moment, I'm going to show you some breadfruit and all kinds of different things that we're growing here and what's going on. But here, let me pick you up and take you guys with me for a second. This is where we run our podcast, the Regeneration from, which we have not released that yet. Well, we will be releasing it soon. This is the shared area of our farm here with Maliko Tea on Maui. And they are a tea leaf farm, which we're helping them with some regenerative strategies, as well as we have our own farm here on site. We also have regenerative education centers here on site. Regenerative Education Centers is our nonprofit where we share with people about regenerative farming and different lifestyles. You're going to hear dogs in the background. That's Champ right there. You're going to hear some animals. So I'm going to try to give you a view of what's in the background there. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see that or not, but there's a large pond. There's ulu trees, sugarcane, tea, lychee, mangoes, avocado. Everything you see growing on our porch is soil that we've been making with our composting projects. We're trying to teach people about cold composting and how nutritious it can be. You can take what was once going to the dump and put it in boxes right along your porch and just grow awesome food that you can stick in your meals. This is a solar oven. This is a dryer for seeds. These are, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, shishito peppers. Again, in a box of all soil that we've been able to grow on site. Let's take you over here. Some amaranth. Over here is the operation where the tea leaves are processed. Tea leaves are a cultural resource that the Hawaiians brought here with them. They made slippers out of them. They carried all their food. They used them for ceremonial religious purposes, as well as the root, which had a high sugar content. They made their alcohol. Sam's in the background. Okay, so why do you see a deerskin hanging on the wall? Deerskin's hanging on the wall because we don't waste anything, and our farm is attacked by deers relentlessly. So we have to sort of play the part of the lion here and take care of some of this. But this is mostly just me wanting to show you what's up. What's this? This is called Roselle. Earlier in a post, we showed you this incredible red stuff. Sam, is there possibly any of that in the refrigerator still? The colored? We make all these different colored mixers out of just the plants that we grow. This is turmeric. And what you know is turmeric, but this is actually a native version of it. This is called Pua Olena, which is a native Hawaiian turmeric. This is what we're able to make the tea with the red zinger. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but we can make an incredible red. If you look online, you can see another one that we make this really incredible blue and purple. But that's using different plants that we grow. This one's high in vitamin C. So that's where red zinger tea comes from. It's in the edible hibiscus family. So this flower can also be put in a salad. It can be made into a tea as well. So we have some of our bananas, which are small apple bananas here. There's some papayas. This other thing you see in the background is called a chayote squash. You can eat the green shoots as well as the squash. This is also how it throws seed, is with the squash itself is one seed. So they call it paniolo squash here in Hawaii. In the background you can see this is kind of how we eat coconuts, sweet potato, Tahitian lime, Mexican lime, on site, just to see the workings of what goes down here. Hope I'm not boring everybody with this. But we're going to set you up, and I'm going to show you a few different things now, too. So what I tried to show you earlier was sesame seed. If you didn't guess earlier, these pods, and I'm going to show you up a little bit closer here. This is how it works. Can you see that all right? Is that pretty centered? So this sesame seed pod right here, inside of it, is the sesame seeds. It's really been amazing for me. Since I was a child, I'd show someone a carrot, and they'd be like, wow, that's where a carrot grows from. Or a pineapple grows in the ground and not on a tree. There's something very satisfying about sharing with people some of these things that you might not know where a sesame seed comes from, or that a sesame seed actually has a very beautiful little flower. I'm not sure where the flowers went with it, but yeah, just some cool stuff to get a little closer relationship to our food, understand that it's delicious, but it can be beautiful. It can also help its environment around it and how it grows, companion planting, what it puts into the soil, what it takes out of the soil. These are all things we kind of want to be conscious of. So I'm going to share now. This is known as, around the world, carambola, or a star fruit. And another lovely thing that's growing out here that we get to eat on the property here. And this is...
To remind them that we're here to answer questions.
And oh, by the way, everyone, we're here live. If you're live, we can answer any questions that you have. We've gotten an abundance of questions from people, and I'm not sure we're going to answer those all on this, but I think we're accumulating them. And then on Monday, Monday, we're going to do another Facebook Live, and we're going to have a lot of the answers for people who have emailed in questions from the last ones. And anything you want to ask now, or if you want to email it, if you don't catch this live, we'll make sure we answer that on Monday. Email us. We're going to I don't understand.
info@livingearthsystems.com.
info@livingearthsystems.com is what you need to know to make that happen. I'm obviously not the computer guy here. I grow things, and I share with you how we grow things. But we're going to try to do this consistently. We're going to do it. We figure consistency is how we're going to get you guys on board, and you're going to want to come back and check it out. And so we're going to consistently post things that we feel can be useful to you, that we feel can be inspiring to you, and really beautiful. So starfruit, who would know that it comes from such a beautiful little flower as this? I don't know if that's focusing in for you guys or not, but we're just going to keep moving it around to see if you guys can see it. And this is how a branch becomes a little cluster of starfruit. The bee pollinates this flower, and this flower eventually, if you look really close, you can see tiny, tiny little starfruit on there. Can you guys see that? That's next to the flower. That flower, and you see the petals around it, it opened up, and the starfruit came out of the flower. Now, is that amazing? That little flower, what you see, that tiny thing right there, eventually became this. Really, really cool stuff. So I'm all inspired to be able to share these kind of things with you. So, sesame seeds, starfruit. We're going to share something else right now, which is called ulu. And this was one of the main staples of the South Pacific. A lot of the Polynesian voyagers, this was one of their main foods, along with taro and some other things. We showed you tea leaf earlier. They made their alcohol out of the root and some sugar stuff. They use that for a lot of different things. This, they made a poi with it in the South Pacific and Samoa. In Hawaii, they use taro to make poi. But the ulu plant is one of the highest producing, incredible food plants on the planet. Patagonia right now, with their provisions company, is actually releasing ulu chips. And there's a lot of information on just how sustainable of a food crop ulu can be. Sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, not tilling up the soil and ripping it up in between harvests, and the abundance. Like if you look at the numbers, it's just astronomical. Ask us some of those numbers and we'll answer them on Monday when we do the Facebook Live as well. We can give you some of those statistics. So that is ulu, breadfruit. The leaf of the ulu, as well as, if you look here on the table behind me, there's this white sap. This sap was actually used at times to laminate different wood materials and even the canoes. And if you look on the back of the leaf here, you guys can't see it, but it's actually, there's a very fine grit on it. And this was used to sand and fine polish objects like gourds, possibly canoes and other things as well. Yeah, so this is the ulu tree breadfruit, one of the staples of the South Pacific. Another really cool thing to share. We'll go in depth on some of these things later on. I'm going to grab something else to show you. As the ulu moved, I want to say east. Who knows which way it went, but it showed up in South America and eventually in the West Indies and made its way down towards the Atlantic in that direction. So as it did, it changed. The plant is almost identical. You can see the two leaves, the leaf of the ulu and the leaf of the ulu nut is what I'm showing you. A lot of people don't know about ulu nut. And ulu nut, actually, if you open it up, there's not much meat to eat. It's all seeds. These seeds are actually an incredibly nutritious sprouted food. That means they have those extra amino acids. It's a resistant starch, just like the ulu is, and it's easy to store, much easier than the ulu to store. You can dry them out, and you can make flour out of it. But if you go to Jamaica or anywhere in the West Indies or in South America, this is a major food crop in that direction. But kind of interesting how plants evolve and they voyage and people bring them with them and they sort of evolve into something else. I'm fascinated by ethnobotany and how cultures sort of grow up around food and food sort of evolves around cultures as well and how this happens. So this is the close, direct, actually cousin to the ulu, the breadfruit, and this is called bread nut, ulu nut, and it tastes very similar to a fresh chestnut, which is amazing. I've only had them a few times because they don't grow here in Hawaii. But yeah, the ulu nut, another thing that we're growing. We're trying to promote a lot of the Hawaiian Polynesian voyaging plants for agroforestry that actually fits for Hawaii. If you think about where our soil biome came from, volcanic rock. Things were brought here, things floated here. They dropped leaves. The nitrogen fixers allowed it to break down soil and add some little bit of extra nitrogen. So it was built by these plants, and we feel like these plants do the best for us here. So they're also high yields without necessarily the mistakes of giant monoculture where you're constantly ripping up the ground. Now we have the ability to share with people a different way to look at agriculture. I don't know if you guys have heard of the term regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture means trying to regenerate things that have been damaged, try to make it better than when you started. Sustainability is not quite enough. We're already way beyond that. So our deal is like, how do we use technology, our time, ourselves, to speed this process up, but not necessarily go against the rules of nature. Try to learn from what nature has taught us, know that it takes years and decades to make soil, but we can actually start making some soil ourselves if we're like practically observing what's going on, watching how leaves fall from the tree, watching how insects move in and start to break it down, trying to look how fungi are involved in that whole situation. And then we learned how to break down things into just this incredible soil. So what we showed you earlier was all the plants that we have on the porch here. Those are all grown in soil that we were able to make. So we take the seeds out of an ulu nut, we eat those. There's a lot of leftover byproducts. We feed that to the earthworms along with grass clippings, leaves, cardboard, newspapers, kitchen scraps. They make incredible, super rich, fertile soil for us. I didn't show you a sample of it today up here because we just kind of did this impromptu, but Monday we're going to have a real in-depth, probably an hour-long Facebook Live, and we're going to run you through some of the processes that we use to build incredibly rich, nutrient-dense soil. If I want soil that has phosphorus in it or potassium, I'm going to compost things that have potassium and phosphorus in it. I'm going to sort of target those nutrients and minerals that I'm looking for, and I want to create super soil that way. So that's what we're about sharing. If we can get everybody like diverting a little bit of their waste from going to the landfill and actually creating super soil for themselves and the food they grow, we help them with this incredible connection to nature. Also, the diversity and where our food comes from, there's like going to be a whole little mind shift. That's happening already. So we're just trying to arm you with some information. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. I'm not real used to doing these Facebook Lives, so this is new to me. But I am going to try to be really consistent and share as much as I can. The more questions you guys send me, the more I can answer and I can share what's relevant to you, why you're coming to this, why you're looking at what we do. A lot of you might not know us. I'm Eddie Garcia. Yeah, I grow food. I share with people how to grow food. I'm going to show you something else now. What did we not show?
And hey guys, I'm behind the camera, but so I can see everyone's comments and
in the chat, and there's a few people on with us live, and we just want to encourage you to ask any questions you have. Eddie is here to answer your questions, and we would love to hear from you. So Eddie is bringing something else to show you right now while we're waiting for questions to come in, but I just want to encourage you to do so.
I think instead of me bringing you stuff, I'm going to try to see how far I can bring you to stuff. Sam, you're going to have to be the camera person and follow me around again this last time, and I can show you a little more in depth. Some of you showed up a little bit late. Maybe some of you want to see what we showed earlier. But we're going to do this, and then we're going to let you go, but we want to make sure that we can invite everybody to Monday's Facebook Live, which I think there's going to be a lot more to share. And what else do we need to tell them? Instead of her telling me.
Yeah, that makes more sense. So we're going to be doing a Facebook Live on Monday at 8 a.m. We're going to do a little presentation with lots of pictures and case studies. So if you want to join us there, we'd love to have you. And you can get on our many chat, and we'll send you like a little message when we go live. If you want to do that, I'll put that in the chat once I get back behind the camera. And then other than that, we do have our soil building course, our composting course, open right now for enrollment. That's going to be a live 6-week course where you're going together with a cohort of people actually moving through the process that we do whenever we start on a new property or start a new garden, or just all of the time, the process that we're doing with composting and building soil. And it's remarkable how much soil you can actually build. So in the description, there's a link to that if you want to check that out. And enrollment closes for that on August 30th. But now I'll get back behind the camera, and Eddie will show you more stuff.
And that class, what that's basically going to be is some of these Facebook Lives we've been doing, and just if you look at our blog or you look at the culmination of stuff we've been sharing for many years now, cardboard, newspaper, food scraps, it makes up like a third of the dump. You're talking about huge amounts of methane into the atmosphere. Not to mention your yard waste, that's a huge part of it. So you might hear, oh yeah, in San Francisco they're composting that and they're giving it back to the people. I did a little bit of looking close at that, and a lot of those places they're using actually the porta potties as their green source of nitrogen so that they can heat these piles up to do it on such a large scale. They're also in an area where there's not a lot of fauna and flora that are beneficial that can move back into that compost after it's reached these super high temperatures. So what we're trying to share with people is what we call cold composting, where creatures actually eat it, they break it down. It's a more stable compost with globulin in it. It means it's not going to run off into the water table. It's going to be there held and sequestered rather than being CO2 in the sky. CO2 is sequestered by plants and turned into sugars that is actually held in the soil and used to build soil with. So that's a whole other thing that I can share with you guys.
So we have a question from Connie. Where do I start? First steps after quote unquote making the container.
I'm not sure which container you're talking about. If you're talking about a planting container or what
I think
container.
A composting container.
So there's several ways to do it. You can use almost anything for a container. You don't need a container. You can lay a tarp on the ground. You don't need a tarp on the ground. You can just lay it right on the ground and start composting that way. But that's not a real simple answer. I would suggest that on Monday, definitely tune in, and we're going to walk through those physical steps and show a bunch of different containers that we've set up a slideshow with. And I think it would be easier for me to explain it to you that way, Connie. But where you start for us, you have to maybe answer on the comments. Are you talking about in the ground? Or what exact container are you talking about? And I'll wait for that question for you, and I'll keep babbling about some more stuff to everybody. So we're going to wait for a question. Sam,
and just as a general, first of all, we do have a great overview blog that goes through our step-by-step process of what we do, just as a bird's eye view. I'm going to put that in the chat in response to your question, because that could generate more questions from you that we can go off of. And wouldn't you say that one of the first steps is building up worm population and other creatures' populations?
It is, but I think what she's asking about when she's asking about a container, I don't know if you mean a worm bin. I don't know if you mean a container for compost or a container to plant in. So we have to elaborate on that question for sure. And where to start at, like Sam's saying. You want to I recommend one of the first things we do in our course is we teach people how to make an earthworm bin. We show them where to get multiple species of worms, which a lot of people are not doing, and allow them to interact with each other in the bin. Then we allow that bin to spill over into a pile that we have these containers set up in. So now we can just move the container to areas we want to garden in. We call it seeding. So, like she's right, we want to build up the life we have, however it is. If you're urban, you might have to do it in a container. If you're on a farm, a lot of it is around you already, and it's just as simple as collecting some leaves from under trees, looking for roly-polies and earthworms around you that are in that area. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. So I think we can go through that a little better as people ask us more detailed questions.
So Connie says, I was just thinking of making a small, maybe 3x3 container out of wood.
Container for
Composting.
3x3 container out of wood can work perfect for composting, no problem. You want to ask yourself, what type of composting are you doing? Are you composting a chemical process known as thermophilic composting? It's thermophilic composting. I'm being corrected. It's funny, we say this word so much, and I think I was in the off thing of calling it thermophilic, but thermophilic compost is a chemical process where there's a carbon to nitrogen ratio, and the compost actually heats up. It gets really hot. It can reach temperatures as high as 160 degrees. So a bin for that, where you're having to turn it and keep oxygen in it, there's not a lot of living creatures in there that make that process go down. This is more of a chemical reaction. After it's cooled down, there are a lot of microbes and bacteria that, yes, they play a huge part in this. But that is one process of composting. What we're sharing with people more is what we call cold composting, where you're taking your kitchen scraps, you're taking your cardboard, you're taking your yard waste, all these things, you're conglomerating them together, and you're not doing the 30-to-1 carbon and nitrogen ratio that creates this chemical process. You're adding quite a bit more carbon in there to the nitrogen, and the creatures are mostly eating what you're considering your nitrogen source, but they're also eating the carbon source in there. So they're breaking it down mechanically by chewing it up, and they're secreting it into what we call castings. You may have heard of worm castings before, a super nutritious organic food for plants. That's the way that it works. So a 3x3 bin can work either for the cold composting or for the hot composting, but there's going to be different rules to how you deal with that. Again, I would suggest that tune in Monday and you'll get a lot better overview on that. Sam, there might be another question?
Yeah, there's another question from Peggy. What components would you add to compost to supply phosphorus?
What components would I add to compost to supply phosphorus? Right now, what I do for a rule of thumb, a lot of people are different. I can show you a couple examples of that. Let's go to a vegan way to add phosphorus to your plants. So you hear a lot of these questions between vegetarians and vegans, which I'm not, but I respect everyone and where they're coming from. This animal, all the animals have been displaced. I think that, that's a whole nother subject in itself. But one of the best sources of phosphorus that I know is I look for a plant that's higher in phosphorus than any other plant that I know, and that is going to be moringa. Moringa right here. It's an incredible food source. It's what we feed our fish. We raise tilapia and several different types of fish, as well as some native Hawaiian fish. And we are actually able to feed them coconut and moringa. So that's a whole other thing we'll be sharing with you, our aquaculture side of things. But I wanted to bring this up because you're talking about phosphorus. So we actually plant tons of moringa. We have it to feed our fish. And then everything that we chop from that, we throw that into our compost pile as well. In our aquaculture operation, we grow shrimp and we grow fish. And when we process some of that fish to eat it, there's bones that are left over and there's shells from the shrimp. And they're very high in phosphorus as well. So there's a lot of different ways to come by phosphorus. If you have chickens and you feed them an organic diet, throwing some chicken manure into your compost, for hot composting, that works incredibly great. It'll heat it up. But for cold composting, it also works incredibly great because half the earthworms we use are actually manure worms, and they will eat that. You just have to put it in there where it doesn't get too hot for them, and they can have extra carbon. there's this 30-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio that is what creates hot composting. So what we're trying to focus on is cold composting, because when the worms eat this phosphorus down, and when they eat the shrimp shells and they eat everything that's else in there, there's going to be a lot more phosphorus readily available for your plants. This is major, and this is that's a whole nother sort of advanced realm I'll go into later on. What I'm really trying to do is just share some of the really basics with people. Why do we want to be conscious of what's in our compost? So I go to a farm and they tell me they're an organic farm. And I'm like, wow, where's your compost pile? There's no compost pile. They're buying chicken meal, bone meal, blood meal from a Tyson chicken factory, and they're throwing that in the ground right on the plants. And yeah, the plants can utilize that, but it's still just going to wind up as salts in the soil, just like chemical fertilizer, because there's not the microbes and the living creatures in the ground to actually process it. So this is what we're really focusing on, is that you need life in the soil to really continue this process of growing soil, taking things from the atmosphere and allowing them to evolve into soil. Strangely enough, sunlight turns into sugars. Sugars build soils. It's really sweet. So, phosphorus. There's a bunch of other ways as well.
Both Peggy says thanks and Connie says thanks. So I'm guessing you answered their questions.
Okay, guys, my answers are really drawn out because I like to be thorough. So bear with me. That's why I suggest the slideshows and some of those other things that are going on. But I'm glad you're with me on that. And hopefully I inspire a little bit of thought in you to sort of think out of the box a little bit. Because it's just been done status quo for so long. And it's created a lot of problems. And we're going to fill you in on some of those problems that have been created and some of the solutions to those problems that are right around us. Literally all around us. Yeah, so we're only going to have you for a little while longer. I'm going to give you another little quick tour of what's going on around here. Sam, the incredible camerawoman. First, I'm going to take it and I want to show you a couple little things up close. Da-da-dun! Sam in the background. Oh yeah, I can look at what I'm showing here. Okay, so earlier, some of the compost we've built, I showed you, we've just got it in simple boxes. And even in little boxes like this, you can see the structure of the plants. And you can see that this is all soil that we've been able to grow out of grass and leaves and cardboard and paper and kitchen scraps. And just managing what we have that's being wasted. That's why they call it yard waste. Look how many flowers there are on this eggplant. And why? Because this is a whole soil made out of worm castings and green material. The farm in the background, I don't know how much of this we've shared with you, but again, check it out. We're going to be doing another really cool Facebook Live coming up soon. These are bananas, avocado. Let's go back this way in the background. Tea leaf in the background. The large tree you see there, that is where the star fruit came from. I don't think my signal is going to allow me to get that close to it. Up there is a mango tree, an avocado tree, a papaya tree. Sam doesn't want to be in the video there. So, okay. If you look way in the background over there, I don't know if I can't make that bigger. Way in the background over there, next to the coconut trees, there's a giant moringa tree back there as well. So, yeah, I hope we get to see everybody on Monday. I'm excited to be doing this all the time and sharing all these different really cool things that we have here. Yeah, so join us again. When is it?
Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific.
Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific, a little reminder there. And we are livingearthsystems.com. We are also Regenerative Education Centers, recenters.org. You can find us on Instagram as Living Earth Systems. You can also find my surfing and kite surfing page, Eddie Garcia, and that is called Maui New Earth on Instagram as well. Check it out. Say hi wherever you're at. If you're on Maui, come say hi to us on the farm. Yeah, we want to engage. Aloha, everyone.